Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of the Sunday Show After Dark. I am your host, Aron Ra, and joining me is the voice of butter, Seth Andrews. Seth, how are you doing, sir?
Brother, it's always good to see you. Forgive me, the voice is a little bit shredded. We've been very active today. A lot of time outside, pollen count through the roof. I may look a little pink to everybody because of all the time in the sun. But Natalie's got us doing yoga. So, we started the day, and I was hesitant when she first signed us up because I thought, well, I don't want to walk into a room and there's like a painting of the Maharishi on the wall and somebody's asking me about the alignment of my energy meridians and shit like that, But fortunately, it's just mostly just stretching and mindfulness, and I can get down on some of that, but it's freaking hard. Like, I will never, ever, ever make fun of anybody who does yoga because holy shit, it's 95 degrees and you're in there and, you're doing all of these, everybody else looks like a gazelle and I look like I'm about to have a massive stroke, but it is something that we have begun doing together. So anyway, I'm a little, I sound not quite as good as I feel because I feel really good. And I'm glad to be here. And it's always good to hang out with my brother in the Lord, Aron Ra, my friend. You and I toured the world together. So it's nice to hang out here on the line.
Speaking of which, this reminds me that somebody had, you had promoted this video, and somebody responding to that in social media somewhere was talking about how atheists all know that God is really real because of what was it, Romans 1 or whatever, and they forget all of the places where the Bible talks about all the people who did not know God, and how this is a blessing for those who believe, which of course implies that there are those who do not believe. And then there's all these other references to the Pharaoh did not know God, and all these other people did not know God. It's funny to me that these biblical literalists ignore so much of their own book that contradicts the one thing that they want to quote to say, well, you and I believe as they do. Which, if that were true, let's just think about that for a moment. There's this indomitable despot who knows everything, sees everything, reads our minds. But we're going to pretend he doesn't exist because we are as impressively stupid as the ravenous bug bladder beast of Troll, wherein we think that if we can't see you, you can't see us. That we're that dumb. So we're going to pretend that God doesn't exist so that we can sin, because somehow pretending that God can't see us makes it okay. Knowing, as these people insist, that we know that God exists and that we know that God can see and knows everything. And even if we lie and pretend that we didn't know that he exists, well, he would know whether we think that he exists, right? And so what's the only thing that really pisses God off is when you deny him, when you blaspheme, when you say that there is no God or whatever. So it occurs to me that if you really loved sin, whatever the fuck that means, that be a Christian, sin all you want to, and then ask for forgiveness. But if you're going to say that you're atheist, if you're going to say there really is no God, you better be pretty frickin' sure about that. We're obviously not pretending that there's no God so that we can do whatever the hell we want to. We're not even doing whatever the hell we want to. Christians are the ones that tell me all the time that if it wasn't for God, that they'd be out raping and killing and vandalizing and destroying everything. I'm like, oh, okay, so what you're telling me is that you're a deeply immoral person on a leash, and that therefore I am more moral than you are because I have no leash and no leash holder, and I'm not doing all of the shit that you think would be fun and that I think would be horrific.
I saw somebody debating. It was an apologist and atheist debate at Rogers State University in Claremore, Oklahoma. And I'd never heard somebody actually say that overtly before. You know, the only reason I am not a killer and a rapist is because of God. I mean, they'll flip that and say, how do you know rape and murder are wrong? But I'd never before heard an apologist actually say out loud, well, it's a good thing I believe in God, or who knows what I'm capable of. And he was on stage and he said that very thing. You know, if I wasn't a Christian, I mean, I might be out there committing all kinds of heinous crimes. And the atheist who was debating him looked over and said, well, in your case, I'm kind of glad you're a Christian because, I mean, just for the safety of my friends and family, it's quite an admission, to say those things. And I think it's hugely presumptuous for believers. These armchair apologists on social media, they jump in and say, well, you believe in God, you're just in denial or you're just lying about it. Everybody knows there's a God. How presumptuous to say that they crawled inside our skulls. They know how we think. They can speak to our journeys, our perspectives, and sort of stamp this ownership of knowledge on something that is uniquely not theirs. And I find that it's really presumptuous. I've seen atheists do it to some religious people. Well, religious people all think this or do that. And I think it's just as presumptuous when we do it. It's a tremendously tragic position to take. But I think we have to allow that people are on their own journeys. And I don't think I'm too naive when I say that most people are taking those journeys relatively honestly. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
You're muted.
I can't hear Aron Ra. I can't hear his voice.
I should have said at the beginning of this call, this is July 7th. I don't know if I said that before, but hey, here we are. And would you like to start with a couple of calls? We don't have any theists yet because for whatever reason, theists are really loud when it's all in text on social media. They're all kinds of loud in Twitter and on Facebook, but come time to show anything in real life, well, sometimes the faith just leaves them, doesn't it?
I was thinking, this is a digression. It might be good that my voice is a little shredded tonight because people have started to accuse me in the comment sections of not being real. I'm sick of this AI stuff. Why is there an AI voice on this channel? I hate these bots. The cadence is so obviously manufactured or fake. That's a new thing I never thought would happen. Like I've heard, I hate his voice, or he sounds like a preacher, or he's too formal, or this or that. But I've never heard he does not sound like a flesh and blood human being. That's a new one for
Yeah.
me. So maybe the sort of the shredded larynx tonight will help to overcome this claim that somehow I was created in a machine. I certainly hope so. I'd like to restore my humanity and bring that to the broadcast tonight. Take whatever calls you want. I will follow your lead, my brother.
All right. Until we can get some believers to muster the gumption to call in, we'll talk to a couple of atheists. So we're going to start with River.
Restore my humanity and bring that.
In Alaska. So,
Yeah.
River, can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. And what would you like to talk about?
Like, I've been a Christian for like 6 or 7 years, and now I realize it's not real. I just want to know, like, what historical truth is in the Bible. I know there is some, very little, but I just want to know, like, how much is in there that is true.
Yeah, precious little. So there's scattered bits of, there's reason to believe that even though we don't have direct I don't think we have any direct evidence for Solomon or David. There is some notion that kings of this name existed at one time or another, though the stories about them are not. They're probably not remotely true. It's very likely that there was once a Solomon or a David, that these names were not just made up out of whole cloth. But the stories, and we know that there's a place called Ethiopia. There's a river called Euphrates. Not a lot else. There was a King Herod. There was a Pilate. Again, not a whole lot else. So it's kind of surprising how little of the Bible, and the way that it works is that the older books, you get way back into the antiquity of the Old Testament, nothing, absolutely nothing at all is true. The most recent books, little bits actually happened. So it's like
Morgan, do I have a low monitor on my end? I'm having a hard time hearing Aron. I can crank that up on my side, but I want to make sure that either I'm not exploding over the top of him or that I have a setting wrong.
Well, yeah, I think so, because there's some comments there that says that I'm a little quiet, which I don't usually hear. That's not a criticism I normally get, but I'll move the mic a little closer and try again.
Both are fixed.
Sorry for the interruption, brother. My fault.
Worries, no worries.
You know, it's interesting, I think...
You want to address that answer?
No, I think, how many mythologies take place in actual cities and reference actual characters, but it doesn't add any credence to the mythologies. And we think of the 66 books of the Bible. Wow, to ask which parts are historically sound, or which things or people were actually there, or which existed. This is a deep, 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 deep dive. But for me, it kind of begins and ends with, we know that the stories around these real places, Jerusalem, etc., we know that they are mythology, they're magic. Many of them are borrowed or combined from other previous religious or faith traditions and cultures. So there's no reason to believe any of it. And so I don't go much further than that. I don't know if that's lazy of me or not, but that's where I fall.
Yeah. River, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that's 100% true.
Yeah.
Well, it's been wonderful solving the world's problems here. I think, if people should ask us more stuff, if we're that good, we could just sort of put a punctuation mark on it. But honestly, I'm glad that you were able to carve a path out of Christianity. And my encouragement to you is to keep asking the questions. And if anyone says that some subject is off limits, look them in the eye, say, congratulations. That is now the first question I'm going to ask. There are no sacred cows, so continue to dissect the Bible. It's an interesting book, but it's also a problematic and occasionally very horrifying book. And it's okay to examine it, to sort of unlayer the onion there on your own terms. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Best of luck on your continued journey.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to let you go. We're going to take the next call. Thank you so much.
See you.
All right. And so now we're going to be talking with, let me see who have we got. Oh, we got a theist in Lord. I'm going to prioritize that one. So we're talking with, if I can pull it up on the line. Did that other call not drop?
It's funny, as you're navigating the switchboard, I was speaking at, I want to say it was Iowa State University, and we had some theists, students in the room, and one person stood up speaking about the history of the Bible and how he knew that Moses wrote the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. And it was history, And I looked him in the eye and I said, you realize Moses died in Deuteronomy. So in order for him to write that book, he would have had to crawl out of his own grave and apparently grab a tablet And he would have had to actually, posthumously write the book of Deuteronomy. But in the eyes, the wide eyes of this student, that Bible was history, and he knew that the Pentateuch was history because Moses wrote it, and it was true because it was. And even he didn't know about the death of Moses, and it was the atheist that had to inform him. I found that interesting. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Jeff, can you hear us?
Yes, Aron. Let me see, Aron Ra. I'm pronouncing that correctly, I hope. First time talking to you.
Pretty close. At least you made an attempt. Just like the letters RN. Just Aron.
Aron. Gotcha. And my man Seth, I finally got to speak to you, sir.
It's an honor.
Back in 1996, I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I stayed there till 2011. So for a good portion of my stay there, you were like the background soundtrack for me in a lot of ways, and I really admired your professionalism on the air, KXOJ.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware of what he's referencing, if I may, Jeff, I was on the air as a Christian radio host from 1990 to 2002. And so he is referencing the time that I was doing a morning show when we played Christian music and had Christian concerts and did Christian things. And so, well, I appreciate the kind words, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, I was working at the John 3:16 mission. I'm sure you remember that. So we would hear you quite a bit back then when you were on the air. So it was awesome to see your face. Well, I don't think I even, while I was there, I don't think I saw your face. I just heard your voice, that lovely voice, heavenly voice you got.
It's funny because, I had such a baby face, but the voice was really, really deep at the time. Certainly when I would go to live events, or I was supposed to MC concerts, or I was meeting with a client for some official reason, many times they did not think it was me. They thought I was some poser who was trying to sneak backstage to go and hang out in the green room with the band. And I was like, no, really, it's me. No, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. I had no credibility beyond the room with the microphone. And a lot of people are surprised to hear me say this. And I wrote this in my autobiography, Deconverted, that my time at KXOJ was largely wonderful. The listeners were lovely people.
Oh, sorry.
And the audience, they were really, really good folks. And I had a tremendously good time for most of my tenure there. And so I don't look back at my time in Christian radio really with any ill will. I don't have a bad taste in my mouth beyond the fact that I'm still beating myself up for not doing enough of my own thinking about the things that I was promoting on the air. But I'm glad you remember. It means a lot, Jeff. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you were very professional, man. That's the one thing I really admired, and I even aspired to that profession myself, but I never got as far as you did, unfortunately. But I always wonder if you still have some of that old Christian music somewhere that you and Matt, if you got it and you just don't want to let anybody know, and every now and again you sneak off and listen to it every now and again.
This is not an uncommon question. This is an old podcast. And and the audio quality was pretty bad because I think Blog Talk Radio had not yet been purchased by Spreaker and iHeartRadio, so the fidelity was pretty bad. But I did a podcast on the Thinking Atheist called The Christian Radio Days, and I had found just a couple of small sound bites from my radio tenure back then. And I was that guy, the Bible is literally true. And I was a kind of a hand over heart, Ronald Reagan, conservative, Republican, evangelical, and all those types of things. But having been raised with Christian music around me, I know it's a punchline. I know a lot of people, and some of those punchlines are deserved. Because, as I said in the speech that I gave called The Copycats, a great deal of what Christian radio was doing, had already been done
Uh-huh.
by pop and rock radio 6 months before. We were just finding out what was popular, and then we'd manufacture a Christian version of it. But even now, if I hear certain songs, they take me back to a time in my life. They bring up certain memories,
Mhm.
and I mean, I don't seek it out. But if anything
Yeah.
from Petra's Not of This World album comes on, I might smile and crank it up and
I
listen
do
to
it. I
it.
do it.
If Not of This World comes on or any of those, I was there at the concert, second row at the Old Lady on Brady Theater in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It brings back some memories for me. But no, I don't really seek it
Right.
out. But anyway,
Yeah,
forgive
I
the long
understand.
answer. You opened a door into my cherished past. So
Right. Well, much respect to you, sir. Okay, Mr. Aron Ra, what's up, man?
That's your question. What's up?
do you have a specific theist
Well,
or atheist related question for the show today? Or
yeah, I didn't have an actual question. There was a statement that I think was posted under my thing. I don't know if you guys saw it, but I believe that
Yeah, it
we
says you
can
can
know
know
things
through
by.
faith. And if that's your argument, I would love to argue that, because no, you can't.
no. I'd like. Can you articulate the question in more detail for me?
But that's all it says on my key, is that we can know through faith, or know by faith.
Is that not understandable, Mr. Seth?
What I'm trying to understand is it's called faith because it's not knowledge. So how can one know through faith?
You get the knowledge and you know it by faith.
Nope.
So if a devout Muslim
faith is
was
not
to come
knowledge,
to you and say that I have faith in Allah, I know it's true. If a devout Muslim said that I know by faith that Allah is the one true God and the Quran is true, and I know it in my heart, I've been given that knowledge through faith, would you accept that at face value from the Muslim?
Probably only to the extent that you guys accept people's testimony on here when they come on, and you basically say, well, I believe that you had that experience, but I don't know it to be true. So in the same, well, I know a little bit about Islam, so there are reasons why I would not accept his testimony about Islam, because I've investigated it to some extent.
The Muslim would likely say the same thing about you. I'm up on my Abrahamic faiths, and I've read the Bible, and I've got some issues with the Bible, so I don't hold to the Christian God.
Okay, that maybe that's a little further than which is why I was very succinct with the actual phrase, we can know by faith. And I'll give you just one simple example. On this phone call, when the call screener asked me what my name was, I said my name was Jeff. And he wrote my name down, and you guys are engaging me as that name, Jeff. Now, I gave him the information, the knowledge of my name, and he believed it enough to write it down. You guys are believing it enough to engage me using that name. So you know my name by faith, and it is the truth. That is my name.
Well, we don't know that it's the truth, and we don't know that it's your name. Honestly, if you were to call in and you can have the deepest Wolfman Jack baritone voice you like, and say, call me Sally, and I'm going to show you the respect of calling you Sally. It has nothing to do with about whether I know your name or whether it's the truth.
So
So
at this point in time, I'm sorry, I'm at work, so you might hear something on my phone. Forgive me. So you're saying that at this point in time, you don't know that you can't say with certainty that my name is Jeff. You don't have faith in that. You're just going to use it out of respect. Is that
well, I think the problem is we're using different definitions of faith. If we're talking about religion, then we have a different context. very often I see equivocation being used so that people will conflate. They'll try to use faith in the context of being just a synonym of trust. But when we're talking about religion, we're not talking about just a synonym of trust. We're talking about something very specific. We're talking, in order for trust to become religious faith, it needs both a prefix and a suffix, because trust is a complete, or a faith is a complete trust that is not based on evidence.
Well, I would agree with the first part of that. It is a complete trust, but to say it's not based on evidence is ridiculous, and I reject it wholeheartedly.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's prove that. So the reason that you believe in God and the reason you believe in the Bible and all of that is not because of evidence, because there's no evidence you can show. What it is based on is an assumption of authority. So arguments from authority, as Carl Sagan said, arguments from authority are worthless. But that's what faith is about. Faith is an assumption of authority arguments, not evidence. So if it was evidence, it was based on evidence, you would be able to cite for me the actual facts, the objectively verifiable facts, things both of us can show to be true, that are positively indicative of your position over any other, and that should compel me as well. And you would also be able to show, or I would be able to sum up for you, what other facts, what contrary facts we might present that, if they were real, would compel you to change your mind and stop believing in God. But the thing is, your belief is not based on evidence. You didn't change your mind. You were not convinced by any fact in order to believe. And just like Ken Ham, when they asked at the end of that debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye, what would change your mind? Bill Nye said evidence. Ken Ham said nothing. Nothing will ever change my mind. That's faith.
Well, you see what you did there, Aron? You told me, you basically just said without hearing about any facts that I may have, anything that I considered as far as evidence. You just said I didn't have any evidence. It was just based on authority. That's an assumption you're making.
Don't know that. Yeah, it's a pretty safe assumption. I've been doing this for more than a quarter of a century. I've been arguing with believers literally every day for the last 25 years or more. None of you have ever produced a single fact. There's no actual factual evidence, nor logically valid arguments either. Nothing to support belief in God. You believe in assumptions of authority. That's it. That's all, and nothing more than that.
I'm going to push back just a little bit. I don't like telling Jeff how and where he came to his conclusion. We just had a conversation.
I'm making a challenge. I'm offering him he's welcome to correct me. But the thing is he already knows he can't.
Well, rather than say, I know you don't have any evidence, what if we were to say, Jeff, what is your evidence? I would be curious. Okay. Jeff, did you bring, I would like to hear what you brought to the table. Do you have some facts for us that might impact our perceptions of the world?
Okay, so I'm 57. I'll be 58 in December. I became a Christian when I was 10 years old. In my years and in my experience of life, I've experienced goodness. And I would put the question to both of you guys, in your experience of life, or however long you guys have been living, have you experienced goodness in your life?
Of course, like everybody else has.
Okay.
But now,
Seth, I'm
going
sure
back
you have,
to the question.
Forgive me.
That Seth specifically asked, and that I challenged you to answer. Do you have an actual fact that is positively indicative of your God hypothesis, or exclusively concordant with that over any other position or option?
It's all of reality. The I am is in fact equivalent to reality. So it's foolish for us to say there's no evidence for God. What, reality?
Yeah, but you just said you're saying it's foolish to say that there's no evidence for God, but we are, I remind you, still waiting for you to present the fact. and a fact is objectively verifiable data, that would be something that we can both show to be true, that is also indicative of your position. Now, your subjective impressions, your circular assumptions, the question-begging fallacy, which is ubiquitous throughout all religious belief, logical fallacies are not evidence. We're looking for facts now. You said all of
Is reality
which
evidence?
I would argue that all of reality directly and violently contradicts belief in God. So I'm going to ask you to clarify and try to stay a little more factual.
I would disagree with you. I think all of reality testifies in the positive for a God.
Well, if we want to get
So
into
there's where we
specifics, I can
differ.
show you how it doesn't. But we're still looking for you to present a fact that implies that it should.
Hello?
Hello, I can still hear
Hey,
you.
we're still here.
Yep.
Yeah, I apologize, both of you guys and everybody listening. I'm currently at work, and the guy that I'm working with just called me in to help, and I have to attend to the people that I'm taking care of right now.
Take care
I
of your
really
people. I
apologize
appreciate
for
your
this.
call very much.
Yeah. That's a shame. We
Have a good one.
could have enjoyed this conversation. Sorry that it didn't work out.
Hey, I'll try to call back, if not tonight, next time. Seth, I enjoy you, man. Thank you for everything you did. I mean, as
You're
far
very
as your
kind.
work and everything, I loved it. All right, see you guys.
Very kind. Thank you. You know, I think it's a to be in this sort of nebulous, non-answered territory where all of reality and it's everybody knows and it's incontrovertible. These are sort of non-answers. They're often trained into the believer because I used to speak in much the same way, but they're empty calorie answers. They aren't remotely addressing. And Aron's right. I mean, if you want to talk about how, well, it's all around us, you're like, okay, well, 25,000 people will starve to death today. We had people drowning over the 4th of July holiday weekends in lakes across my home state because we weren't designed with the ability to breathe water. Our sun gives us cancer. Volcanoes and earthquakes and tornadoes and lightning and floods. We live on a planet that's constantly trying to kill us. And, we've got genetic defects which cause mutations and genetic diseases that can be passed down family lines. And so, if we're going to get past the surface of this, we'll look all around you, which is, I think, maybe a variation on look at the trees, look at the beauty. And that cherry picking, I think, well, if you're going to bring up the good, we're certainly going to have to bring up the bad. And this God does not get off the hook on that score. So I don't know, Aron, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Was that where you were going with that?
Yeah, I was a little bit less. You were more the humanitarian than I am. And I think traditionally I've been more the bulldog. So.
Bulldog away. But I mean, I'm just that guy. Occasionally I'll pop in. And by the way, I had somebody I saw in the chat. I can't read too much of it because it's hard for me to multitask. But one person said good cop, bad cop. And I thought that was funny. Another person's mocking me because my skin tone I look like a little bit red. I was out in the sun all day. So forgive me, but yes, I deserve all of the ridicule for looking like I am radioactive. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to pick up another call from another theist because how rare is that? So give me just a minute and we will pick up the call from, where's that screen?
You realize the banner behind you is perfectly positioned so that the horns look as if they're emerging from your head. It's just really well framed.
It saves me the trouble of having to put my horns on. Okay, so
is that purposeful? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Amir from the UK. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys just fine. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, yes. So go ahead with your question, please.
So I was going to make a point that I think that God is the best explanation for why anything at all exists. And when I say God, I'm referring to more of a creative intelligence rather than a religious God. Just off the bat, how do you guys feel about that claim?
Well, how does it become an explanation at all?
How does it become an explanation at all, as in with the explanatory power that comes with the statement that the root cause of why anything at all exists, that's with the fact that there is a God?
Let me phrase this. Let me frame it a little bit differently. I mean, I've talked to a number of cosmologists, physicists, and so forth. Some of the leading ones, in fact, and the way that they describe this is that, you've got the first law of thermodynamics, which is that material energy essentially cannot be created or destroyed. There was never a time in this universe in which there are things when there was no things. There was never a time when there was nothing. I mean, we're accused by creationists daily of believing that everything came from nothing, even though none of us believe that. So it's a little irritating when I hear that accusation all the time, when it's something none of us believe. And it's coming from people who actually do believe in creation ex nihilo, who actually do believe that there was a point when there was just nothing, and then God said abracadabra, and then poof, there's everything. But if we have a universe in which there was always a singularity, at the beginning of cosmic inflation, the singularity already existed, and the singularity either existed before time, or and in either case, there is another. I hesitate to say model, but there's some speculation that there's a former, an earlier version of the universe, kind of like a Big Bang, Big Crunch kind of oscillation, though not exactly the Big Bang, Big Crunch, because I know physicists would say, well, it's not that, but it's trivially different from that. But in a universe in which there are things and there was never no thing, then that's the explanation for why there are things, because you can't get everything from nothing. But when you want to say that when you want to say that God is an explanation of anything, then you're saying, this is how I would paraphrase this, is I don't know, therefore magic. And magic is. I think
he said creative intelligence. Did you mean God, or did you mean?
Just say an overarching question, Aaron. Would you identify as a scientist? Would you say that you are a scientist?
I have not published, and I think that that's going to be the determining factor there. I've done science, but I don't consider myself a scientist because I have never published for peer review.
So when you are referring to different scientific models that can give us explanations to, an eternal universe and things like eternal inflation, would you say that you are putting faith in a handful of scientists that advocate such models?
The other thing that annoys me greatly is that I object to faith as being the most dishonest position it is possible to have. And if you want to seek truth, the first thing you must do is abandon and reject faith. So I abhor being constantly accused of having faith when I don't have faith. Faith, as
there was no accusation. It was just a question.
Well, there was no accusation in the previous call.
Question.
Yeah,
I think the question, though, if somebody was to come to you and say, when you lean on the shoulders of experts in the field, are you in fact taking their word for it when you may not necessarily have the educational tool set? How would you differentiate that acceptance of, credible scientists or those who are deemed credible against taking the word of a pastor or priest? I think, how would you differentiate those two?
The difference between faith.
Sure, but the fact is that there are very diverse.
Hang on, Amir. I'd like to hear Aron address this before we lose the thread. Go ahead, brother.
See, authorities cannot be questioned. Authorities can never be disproved. If an authority says something and then the facts prove the authority wrong, then, as William Lane Craig said, if there's ever a time when science contradicts the scripture, well, then science got it wrong. The authority is always right. It doesn't matter when the evidence proves that the authority is wrong, the authority is still right. Whereas in science, it doesn't matter what your leading expert says. It doesn't matter what a consensus experts say. They can all be disproved by a single inconvenient fact.
I'm sorry, I lost your point. What's the point that you're making there, Aron?
We don't have faith. We have a tentative trust. I mean, when my dentist tells me what's on my x-ray that I can't make out what is on my x-ray, but he tells me what this is and what we're going to have to do about it, I'm going to have to some degree take his word for it, because I don't have, 25 years to go take dental school to challenge his expertise. I'm just going to have to take his word for it. But I'm also not going to ask my dentist what's wrong with my car, and I'm not going to ask him to fix that.
Taking your dental analogy, then, Aron, let's just say there was some procedure where you had 20 different dentists all recommending something different. At that point, what do you do? Because this has now become synonymous with these scientific models that are used to explain the root of reality. There are so many different models, and yeah, absolutely, some of the scientists that represent these particular models are very credible. However, we need to make the point that there are a plethora of different models that could be used to explain.
Are there?
Scientifically.
Can you name 3?
Say string theory would be one model.
Not a scientific theory, and it's not a model. It's a mathematics theory, and is irrelevant
or quantum
to what we're talking about right now.
Okay, I mean, sure, I'll grant you that maybe it's not a theory in that sense, and it's a mathematical model, but these are all models, that are being advocated within the scientific community, or like, a quantum loop, gravity, or, stuff like this. Things that are there to try to reconcile.
Wouldn't they have to be contradictory? I mean, you're going to have multiple, as you put it, multiple theories. I'm assuming that we're talking about like the catalyst for cosmic inflation. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, look, so these models about what can explain inflation, etc. There's something that still needs to precede all of it in terms of what is the mechanism that allows for something like inflation. And I think these are the deeper questions that point us to this creative intelligence that I was highlighting at the start of the call. And
all right, well,
my topic.
Let me give you this answer then, because this is, forgive me, but I hear this all the time. I can't tell you how many thousands of times that I've heard this argument. So what it comes down to is, there was a time when we thought that the movement of the planets were, because the planets had personalities. So there was a time when we thought that comets were an omen, when we thought that epilepsy was demonic possession. And if we'd been satisfied, or if we'd seen thunder and lightning, we thought that these were the actions of the gods. We thought that diseases were curses, or that they were magical enchantments, bad spirits, or whatever, literally, just because they were movement of air. And if we'd been satisfied by these lies, then we never would have figured out what the real truth is. But everything that we've ever decided, I think there's a more natural answer to this. If we've turned out to be a revelation of whole new theory, whole new experiences, explanations in fields of science that were previously unimagined, and vastly more complex than the supernatural answers that we made up in our ignorance. So if we ever find a better explanation for the catalyst of the origin of cosmic inflation, it will be similarly not a god, and it'll be so far beyond a god that it'll be, again, a whole nother field of study that will render our current beliefs in gods and ghosts and that sort of thing laughably ridiculous.
Yeah, just 2 points to that. The first one is, I am sure there is some sort of mechanism that can explain inflation or can, explain the Big Bang. I'm sure that there is. But the question continues, what is the mechanism that explains why that model has, etc. And it will go on. And the options then become some sort of infinite regress or some sort of starting point. And from then on, it becomes a question of being able to deduce what, out of the options of an infinite regress of explanations or a starting explanation, which one is more intellectually appealing. And out of the two, I would say that, which is a viewpoint as well that's shared by a lot of cosmologists, is that there was a starting point.
And because I don't do cosmology. I don't do
very
cosmology.
Quickly, so the second point.
Oh, sorry.
Just a second point as well is that I feel like it's a fallacy to mention, because you're absolutely, even though you're correct, I think that the utility or the way that you're using it is incorrect. You are correct that historically throughout time, people have used gods of the gaps argument, like we didn't understand something, we didn't understand illness, or whatever it is. We would just, go hashtag God. But I think that's not fair to bring that up in the deeper context of these questions when we go down to the absolute base level. Like, okay, sure, let's grant that there is some terrestrial explanation for the Big Bang. Why is there that explanation itself therefore requires answering and being brought into scrutiny?
I'm afraid I didn't understand your question. I mean, what we've got is, if you want to say that there's a God who's behind the universe, then it cannot be the same God that is behind any of the scriptures of any religion, because all of them are wrong. All of them.
I agree with that. I'm on board with that. I'm not religious.
And
I'm just
so,
someone that advocates.
God, one of the next things is how does this, what is proposed to be, I guess, a disembodied mind? How does such a thing exist when that seems to be a contradiction of its own definition? How does it do anything? Because there's telekinesis? Is it Rod Serling and it's just writing the script for how everything is supposed to exist? There's no kind of definition for God. There's no evidence for God. There's literally no reason to believe in a God, and there's a shit ton of good reasons not to.
Yeah, he's not speaking about God. He's talking about an intelligence, though. And I honestly think that's almost as pointless as a declaration. Because just because we do not know what caused the Big Bang does not mean there was an intelligence, a who. It may have been a what. And so I think the correct answer is the one that science says outright and boldly. I don't know, and neither do you.
Yeah.
And, anything else is just projection or speculation. It's academic at this point.
Absolutely.
And back to, if I may, Amir, back to his dentist analogy. The difference is that if I go to the dentist and the dentist says, here's an x-ray which reveals that you have a crack in a molar and you're going to need a root canal and blah, 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 that dentist is resting his expertise on education, which rests on decades upon decades, perhaps even hundreds of years of science of dentistry, which has been tested and retested. It has been evolving and advancing. It has been proven to work time and time and time again. This isn't just something I would take on faith. These are processes that have been tested and retested in a lab and been shown to work. And the expertise of a trained dentist.
I agree. And I need to interject, because that wasn't the point of the analogy. That wasn't the point of the dentist analogy. You're missing it.
No. What I'm saying is, I'm not taking his just his word because he's wearing a lab coat. I'm taking his word because I have done my due diligence to see that this is a trained physician,
absolutely,
specializing in
the point of the analogy. The point of the analogy was to illustrate that if 20 different dentists were all giving conflicting advice, how do you go about?
No. I reject the premise of your statement. If I have a crack, God damn it, Amir, hang on just a second. if I put
You
20
just got Seth
dentists,
to say, God damn it.
if I put 20 dentists in a room and show them an x-ray of a cracked molar, I am not going to get 20 different versions of what is wrong with the molar. I simply reject your statement because that's not how the process, the science of dentistry works. It's certainly not a faith model, and it shouldn't be approached in the way that faith declarations are made. This is not an argument with to authority. We're actually relying on a process that rests on a long history of vetted, peer-reviewed, workable laboratory science.
Which can also be further confirmed by lawsuits. If the dentist says this is the way to fix this problem and he fails to fix the problem, that's going to be visited back upon him. But back to the other point, we don't in science anywhere have 20 different people with different ideas. No, we have an absolute uniform consensus. Now, as I said, I don't do cosmology, but I've seen a number of physicists all agree with each other on cosmology. They don't know if there was if the singularity is necessarily a thing, or if there was a prior time to the singularity. There's a little bit of discrepancy there because it's based on speculation, because our physics can only go so far. So the science literally can only go so far. But when we get into later sciences, especially into evolution and such, well, now we have 99.86% of all the world's collective scientists, whether they're earth scientists or life scientists, biologists, geologists, and they all uniformly agree evolution is a thing. It's a verifiable, traceable thing. And the only objections to that are less than 1% of scientists who, for reasons of prior religious indoctrination,
Guys,
insist
am I okay to come back in
insist on
literally 30
believing and
seconds?
insist on believing in their sacred folklore.
I think we should move on. I really think Amir is bringing nothing new to the conversation today. That's just my 2 cents.
Well,
I
he was
get the-
he
is-
was a
is-
theist, and I get that.
No. I mean, I think it's great. I get the vibe from the chat that he's a serial caller, so he calls often.
Okay.
Is that the case?
Yeah, I'm getting that
And I apologize for a moment. I did lose my temper. I try not to be that.
So I'm
guy.
gonna go ahead and drop this call with Amir. Thank you,
I do.
Seth,
I
for making that suggestion.
try to keep an even tone. It's just, I'm trying to make clear a point. We gave him plenty of rope. There's plenty of elbow room, plenty of oxygen. And I just don't think he was listening. But yes, humblest
we have
apologies.
another theist. I'm sorry, Seth. We have another theist.
No,
waiting.
go ahead.
Amir,
go ahead.
We're going to go ahead and drop this call. I have to make some announcements, and then we're going to pick up another call. And I appreciate that we've got 4 people waiting, and I appreciate all of your patience. Good night, Amir. Okay, and so I do have some announcements to make before we move on to anything else. And let me see, that is, remember that on Monday, 6 p.m. Central Time, all times are Central Time because Texas is the center of the planet. Monday at 6 p.m. Central, Skeptalk with John Gleason and Janice Selby. Then that's tomorrow, of course. And then next day, Tuesday, 6 p.m., we have Chewed Gum with Eve Was Framed and Alyssa Ljub. And then Wednesday at 6 p.m., we have The Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and David Fitzgerald. He's a cut-up character. We have a great time listening to him. Thursday, 2 p.m., Transatlantic Call-In Show with Dr. Josie Caballero. Then Sunday at 2 p.m., there was a Sunday show with Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Adair. And then Sunday at 7, 1 week from today, 1 week from right now, is, of course, the Sunday show After Dark again with Jimmy Snow and Paulogia. Or Paulogia. I understand that both ways are correct. All right, so we're going to pick up the next call. This is Pippi. Pippi, you are on the line. Can you hear us?
Hey. Yes, I can.
Yes.
How you guys doing?
It's all right. What was it you wanted to talk about?
Are you guys fans of pit bulls?
I had a pit bull that was wonderful. I rescued her from a fighting ring, and she was enormously sweet. Yeah.
Do you realize that it could turn on you in any second?
Well, she didn't. and that's probably why she was
Well, have you
abandoned.
looked at statistics?
She didn't have the natural propensity to fight, so that's probably why they threw her out.
And have you looked at the statistics?
No, I haven't, because we're a call-in show that has to do with
Well, they're
religion.
bad.
They're what?
Wait, no, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
It's not a serious caller. This
This
is
is-
not a serious caller. Jesus. Pippi,
Okay.
what is
Okay.
the purpose
Bye.
of your call? What is it that you want today?
He's gone. He's gone. So
That's
you
bizarre.
guessed that correctly. That was a troll.
So let's go back. Let's you and I chat for just a second.
Sure.
I'm interested in the abiogenesis argument. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. Where did the first cell come from? These are all sort of related to each other. Something caused the Big Bang. And whenever someone says that, I always look them in the eye and I say, well, I think we may agree. Something caused it, right? And we have some common ground. It's amazing. It's wonderful. What a beautiful starting point we have. We don't know, but we can agree something took place 13.8 billion years ago. But when I watch
Oh
people,
no, it was 6,000 years ago.
they paint their own sort of, I don't know, they're either their pet deity or the idea of an intelligence. And I can't help but think that they've got like almost an anthropomorphic kind of a human shaped God, almost a Yahweh kind of God in mind. When people talk about what caused the singularity, I know you're not a cosmologist, but you are interested in these things. How do you approach the idea? How did it all begin?
Well, it's a funny thing. You said that, I'm interested in this because I'm really not.
You don't care at
It's,
all about the first cell?
It's irrelevant. Well, the first
Well,
cell
that's a different argument than the Big Bang. Forgive me, but go ahead. Go ahead.
The first cell, I'm all down with that. I am very much
Okay,
interested in that, and I don't see it as a first cell. It's difficult for me to get people to understand that when we're talking about evolution, we're talking about populations. We're not ever talking about an individual changing into something else or giving birth to something else. We're talking about whole populations over many generations. And when we look at the like taxonomic from the molecules to man argument, like Carolus Linnaeus came up with 7 different ranks, and we now know of 10 times that many. There are 70 known clades that we know of, or named clades that we know of so far, that should all be figured into this. But what the believers want is a one step bacteria, human, one step. They want bacteria to turn directly into a human while we sit and watch. And they want it to be they want it to be an individual, and they want it to happen in one lifetime. They're perverting absolutely everything about evolution to get it as wrong as they possibly can.
If we, when I think about the Big Bang and all of the matter of the universe, and everything explodes out. I was working with an astrophysicist, Dr. Dan Batcheldor, with his expertise on the cosmos, with a video that I had produced called "The Story of You." And so we were talking about how the elements were created, etc., which led me into the cells, the first cell and where all life began. And I just find these are interesting questions. I reject the idea that someone simply knows by declaration, or certainly by faith. But I've never seen anyone who says, a scientist certainly, we know where it came from. I think the honest answer is we don't know, but we're fascinated by it. And we certainly are going to keep pursuing these questions in the hope of determining one day what actually happened. I think that's fair. But I was just curious as to how you approach it. Yeah.
I keep a list of different scientific studies that go over the possibilities. They have to show that something can happen in nature, because we're not trying to, and this is important for people to understand. It's not that, when somebody always says, well, why can't scientists create life in a lab? Well, actually, to be completely literal, we can, but that wouldn't give us any new information on how it happened naturally. So there's a series of steps, different chemical environments and things like that we're trying to figure out. And the way to do that is we have to show what can happen, and under controlled conditions, we show that these constituencies will form under these conditions, and there we go. Now we've got something to work with, right? And so I've got dozens, literally dozens, of different studies for different stages or different sequential stages in the development of life, and we still don't have everything yet. There's a number of the formation for organelles are still a little bit mysterious, but we've got an awful lot. I mean, way more than creationists like to pretend. But they don't want to hear about any of that. They want a single stage bag of powder into a machine, push the button, out pops a rabbit. They're trying to misunderstand this as much as they can.
Awkward silence. I await your next cue. My brother, my king. Yeah.
Right,
how's that go?
Pick up.
Lo, do I see my father? Lo, do I see my mother and my sister and my brother? Lo, they do call to me. You ever seen the 13th Warrior? Whenever I see you, I just see one of the Northmen from the 13th Warrior. So I always want to have that speech. Go ahead.
I take that as a huge compliment. I loved that movie. All right, so I'm going to... all right, I am going to pick up another call here. What we are looking at? We have a pantheist. This will be different. So, Jay, you are on the line with us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Jay,
hold on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So, Ern, I'm a big fan. Seth, same.
Thank you.
Been watching you guys for a long time. I just wanted to call in and kind of discuss where I'm at in my personal belief system and see what you guys think. Is that all right?
Please.
Sure.
Perfect. So basically for me, the universe is like plane of existence as we know it. And I'm kind of a pantheist. So I do personally believe that the universe did start with the Big Bang. We don't really know what happened there. And the concept of God is the universe. So thus, the creating and newly expanding items within the cosmos. And that does include evolution. So for me, the cosmos are divine because it can be created, destroyed, and be infinite within itself. And so there is no like quote unquote mind or quote unquote like Jesus or anything like that. It is the universe itself. So that's kind of where I'm at.
May I ask a question or two to make sure I'm understanding? So this is really more of a,
sure.
It's not a prescriptive, it's more of a descriptive thing. You're not saying that the universe has supernatural properties, but you're saying maybe in a colloquial sense that that the universe is this vast thing that is out there. It is sort of the the snow globe in which all life is taking place. Certainly all of our experiences are taking place. And so you have called it God as a kind of framework, but you don't see anything magical, like supernatural about it. Would that be accurate?
Correct.
Why call it God? Why not just call it the universe?
Well, I call it God because I think that that's how we ourselves in religion explain it. Like there's falsehoods in every religion. I've read every text. I was raised it, and I've read them all. And I'm pretty close to being an atheist myself, but I do think that there is like a divinity above us as such a small creation. I don't know what that is, but I do call it God because it is a belief for me. It's because I can't prove it, I guess you could say.
So now I'm hearing echoes of what sounds more like agency. You use the word created. I'm hearing the word God. So do you feel like that we were an intention of the universe?
Not necessarily. I think that the cosmos itself is a random concept. There were lots of scientists I've read about. I'm sorry, I can't think of them right now. I'm a little nervous. But
you're fine, brother. You're doing well.
Basically, the randomness like chaos itself can create things. And I do think that, like, quote unquote, God for me is chaos itself, the universe. And
Well,
so every
I
time
would
I go
never,
back, I know it's a circular argument.
I would never begrudge
Go
you
ahead.
the right to use whatever term you want to, to frame
Mhm.
what you see out there. We have a conversation in the atheist communities where people talk about experiencing the spiritual, but they don't mean supernatural. They're not talking about gods or monsters or ghosts or some sort of an otherworldly membrane out there, spirits in the literal sense. They're using spiritual in the way that we would uh, grope for human language to describe transcendent events, the birth of a beautiful baby, or being able to see the Voyager spacecraft go outside the solar system, or the most amazing, wondrous, profound things that we experience. They say, well, that for me was a spiritual experience. I don't begrudge them that, if that's the term that they want to use. But it becomes a little problematic, I think, when you start to say that the universe and God kind of exist in the same realm, because God, it's such a loaded word. I mean, it also, I think, if you say a God, you are probably talking about a creature, a being, a divinity with agency, who has ideas, who wants certain things done, who plays favorites, who has a blueprint, a master plan, etc. So, I mean, I don't know. I think you might be just as well served by just saying the universe, the cosmos in which we live. That's just me, though.
I did go that, but for me, the chaos is the agency, right? I think it's possible that, like, the chaos was created in some manner, and that is what we created agency, which is us. And
Is there a way to
for
make up
instance,
the
when
cosmos?
go ahead, sorry.
So,
Go ahead.
how would chaos then, essentially, then, what I'm hearing is chaos is order. Am I hearing that wrong, sir?
No, that is kind of a good way to explain it. Correct.
Purposeful chaos, which has an end game in mind. And the end game would be
Correct.
who or what?
I don't even think there necessarily needs to be an end game. I think that just like when we put, like, a terrarium or something of that nature, and you just put things in it, right? And you see what happens. I think it's very similar to the universe. An asteroid hits a planet, and it might have happened only for the very first time, and nobody knew what occurred. And then it did. And so we understood it. But it took chaos to create that understanding for me.
Do you understand, though,
let me
how
jump in.
someone like me, if I may, one sentence, and you're right, I've monopolized this conversation long enough, but you understand that that's all conjecture. There's no evidence to back that up. You're just saying, well, what if? I don't know. And forgive me, Aron. Yeah, let me sit back and watch the magic, because I'm sure you have more to bring to the table than I do. Go ahead.
As I do taxonomy.
Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
I'm so sorry. Actually, no, you're okay. I lost my train of thought. Go ahead. All right.
All right. Well, see, as I do taxonomy, I learn how to classify things, and you can't make certain exclusions. You have to come up with the criteria that describes everything that is universally accepted to be in that set. And if there's an exclusion significant enough to imply that it never should have been in that set in the first place, well, then you have to correct it. But when we're talking about gods, I can't just look at the Abrahamic God or the Zoroastrian God. It can't. People will say, "Well, God is, God is the cosmos. God is the creator of all things." I'm like, well, if that's your definition, and we know that Apollo and Thor and Alcestis, or not Alcestis, but some of the names, Krishna and so forth. Not all of these gods fit all of those definitions. Hermes was not the creator of the universe, right? And neither was Loki or
Right.
and so we have to have a definition that fits all of them. So if we're looking for one definition that covers all of the hundreds of gods or that have been worshipped or thousands of gods that have been worshipped by millions of people for thousands of years, then magical anthropomorphic immortal is what I come up with. Every god ever worshipped by any religion has anthropomorphic characteristics. They have an understanding of human language. They have an understanding of what we're saying to them. Even Fenrir the wolf understands what people are saying and can communicate with us. And they are all immortal. They don't die of old age or cancer. It is possible to kill an immortal, but as with Dracula, who is also an immortal, there are certain ways that you can kill Dracula. Immortals can be killed, but just not by old age, as I said. So, and then they all have magical powers, because if a god doesn't have miraculous abilities, then what is it? But what you're describing is something that has no anthropomorphic characteristics, doesn't understand human language, doesn't give a damn about anything, literally, does not have any magical powers, and was never alive in the first place. So can't even be killed. So it meets none of the definitions. And then when you take the Epicurean quandary to it, I'm sorry, what?
I agree with. I'm going to be honest with you. I agree with like 99.7% of what you just said. Okay.
99.7.
The word alive to me. The word alive to me is where we're going to have a conflict. Okay. Because I do believe it is alive. It's
in what sense?
It's like the self-eating snake symbol. I think it's alive, but it may not even necessarily know what it's doing. It's limited in its capacity as the universe itself. Had a starting point. Now, I don't know if it was created, but it had a starting point. And I don't know. I understand that the argument for there would go from a starting point to there. Exactly.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly. I know just as much as you.
We know that cosmic inflation had a beginning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the universe had a beginning.
Okay, correct. I totally agree with you. I'm agreeing with you on what we do currently understand, but my belief starts there and says, okay, I may not know what has occurred, but due to chaos ensuing and life looking accidental to me, something has been alive. The universe is itself alive. For me, it's an organism itself, I guess you could say.
All right. Well, let me see if I understand.
I believe the universe itself is it.
Yeah, let me understand this. So you said that chaos is order, and that looking like an accident means that it's intentional.
I said it can potentially, yes. And to be totally fair,
it just seems that you're contradicting yourself.
I'm not in any way a scientist at all. I'm really not good with that stuff. I'm in line with. I went to college. I'm in line with science. I agree with evolution, the cosmic, everything that's stated. I read Something from Nothing, Lawrence Krauss, loved it. I'm a big Christopher Hitchens fan. I love the perspectives that atheists come from. But I've never been able to tiptoe over the line there, because I do personally believe the universe is something alive itself.
Jay, you don't need to give us a resume. Like I get it. I think where we rise and fall here is you're making a claim. You say, well, I believe this is likely true. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call that a truth claim or a truth belief. And the next question has to be, can you back that up with some evidence? Otherwise, it's just conjecture, man. And anybody can come along with some sort of a theory, and there's not much we can do with that if you don't have any evidence. It's something I'll chew on. Thanks for calling. We appreciate you. I hope you have a great week. But beyond that, there's just nothing we can really do with it. Does that make sense?
And I've got somebody in the wings who there is a theist calling in right now who has a topic that I know we're going to get some meat out of. So,
no problem. I would love to listen to that. I'll just address it real quick, and we're good to go. Not a problem.
I appreciate you, Jay.
There's multiple different types of chaos. All right, like there's like Lorentzian, for example. There's, I think like sandwich chaos, something of that nature. But there's multiple different experiments that have been done or chaos does create things. And so something can come from nothing. Just because we say we do not know does not mean we don't know something will occur. So that's how I will address that. I appreciated the phone call, guys. And thanks.
They are.
All right. Okay, thank you very much.
I heard Ken and who created the chaos and which kind of chaos would they have created? And there is agency, but there's no agency because there's chaos. It's all soup in my brain. Either I'm really thick or I'm slow or something. Okay. All right. Sorry.
I hear you. Much the same thing. All right, but we've got a theist on here who has a good argument, or it doesn't have a good argument, but has a topic that interests me very much. So, Theopolis from Italy, can you hear us? Theopolis.
Great name.
Yeah. Theopolis, you're online. Sunday show after dark.
Theopolis would be a great Viking name. Lo, do I see my father? Lo, do I see my mother and my sister and my brother? Sorry, I guess I'm going to have to go rent the movie. I've just had it sort of embedded in my brain. So go ahead.
Yeah. Oh. Are you there?
Apparently not.
When I heard, yeah, apparently not.
I thought of you while we're waiting. I thought of you. Someone sent me a video of an MMA, a mixed martial arts ring. But instead of MMA fighters, there were people in armor battling with swords. I did not realize this was a thing, and you were the first person that came to my mind. You would be perfect for that. You go in there with a long coat, you put on your helmet, you wield your sword, whatever your sword's name will be, I don't know, and you just do battle in there. I can totally see it. Didn't you used to go to like big parks and do this kind of thing?
Do that, yes.
What do they call
the best
that?
Battle? Well, I was with two of them. One of them that didn't require armor. They used safety padded swords that were just like boffer weapons. But then there was one that the weapons you use were made of wood, and they would cause serious damage. So you had to have real steel armor. And so I remember building my armor in a blacksmith shop with the big old pliers over the anvil with the hammer and all of that. And I built a whole suit of armor, reticulated steel armor, and I covered that with the hides of various animals, and I absolutely loved it. I hit the field. The best battle I've done a number of battles, several battles, but the best one by far was where there were 3,000 warriors on the field. That just
sounds like a trip to the hospital, buddy. It just sounds like
that was
total absolute.
There was a lot of trips to the hospital. I sent 6 people. They had to bring out an ambulance 6 times just for me. I mean, not for me, but for the people that I sent. The closest
crazy.
I got was when I caught a spear. I caught a spear in the face in 2 different directions. 2 spears hit me in the face at the same time and lifted me off the ground and landed me on my back.
I guess this is an entire subculture of people who do these battle reenactments in public places. I just think it's remarkable. I think it's just remarkable, but I do picture you there. You know, you were really born in the wrong century, Aron. I mean, I say that as a compliment. So, anyway, just digression.
I actually appreciate living when I do. So, Theopolis, do we have you back? It looked like it was dropped off, went back into the call queue. Theopolis, are you there? Drat. No Theopolis. I will have to return this one to the queue. All right. So in the meantime, I'm going to take another couple of calls, and we have an atheist. Jeff wants to talk about the definition of evidence. Jeff, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Have we talked about this before?
So You and I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. The reason why I want to talk about the definition of evidence is just that I had an experience today that made me realize that even though we all use the word evidence colloquially, there can be intelligent, rational people who don't necessarily agree on what it means, and this can create a lot of confusion and talking past one another. And I was simply just blown away because I heard somebody that I have a lot of respect for give a definition of evidence that I didn't agree with earlier today, and I was like, wow, I think maybe I should just see if I'm the odd man out, or how do other people think about evidence, and how do they define it?
Do you know how I define evidence?
Nope, that's why I'm calling.
Okay. All right. So evidence is a body of facts, meaning objectively verifiable data, meaning that it's something that we can both show to be true. But these facts must also be positively indicative of and or exclusively concordant with one available position or hypothesis over any other. Now, you can have a number of different options, and the same fact could be true in any of them. But if that's the case, then it's not evidence. It's only a fact. It's when that fact eliminates one of the options. Well, if this is true, well, then this can't be true. Well, then that fact eliminates that option. Or when that fact indicates one particular one over any other, so that you either do a process of elimination or you just zero in on that one particular thing.
I see. So,
yeah.
So as long as it eliminates some option.
Yeah, it has to be indicative. Okay. And the simplest dictionary definition you'll ever see is a fact that indicates.
Okay, interesting. So my background, I'm a mathematician, and I always thought about evidence as being an observation that increases the probability of a claim, that a claim is true. And
yeah, we're saying
in the event that it eliminates competing claims. Yeah. As long as it eliminates competing claims, then it does increase the probability, right?
Indeed.
I think that's what you're saying. If it's not concordant with some of the competing claims, then you can rule those out, and necessarily the other ones become more probable.
Exactly.
Okay. Interesting. So yeah, this is now the second time I'd heard someone put it like that, and that was the phrasing that made me go, wait a second. I need to clarify what everybody else means by evidence to make sure we're talking about the same thing. I always think about the money hole problem when I'm conceptualizing it. Yeah.
One of the examples that I like to give is when people say that you can't have evidence if it's not an eyewitness. If you didn't see it, then it can't be evidence. Well, let's just say that you wake up in the morning and your daughter is missing. She's not in her room. Okay, what happened? You go outside, maybe you notice that her window is open or her shades are open or whatever. So you go outside and you see a trail of cleated boot prints. Much too big to be hers. These are clearly not her shoe prints. But it's fresh snow from the night before, and here's these boot prints that walk right up to her window. This fact would kind of contradict the idea that she just ran away on her own. That somebody was involved in that.
Yeah.
And people, when it comes to their daughter or whatever, they would realize, okay, they know as well as anybody. If you saw boot prints walking up to your daughter's window, you would know somebody walked up to your daughter's window. You didn't have to be there to see it happen.
Yeah. So what about the case where you've got two competing claims? You've got an observation that comports with both claims, but the requirements, the additional requirements for that evidence to comport with each claim might be more likely in one case and less likely in another. So you say, yeah, it could be either or, but for it to be case A, you would have to have all of these other very unlikely things. And in case B, you don't require all of these additional unlikely assumptions. And so in that case, mathematically, you could say it's showing one is more probable, but it isn't excluding the other one. It isn't excluding the second hypothesis. Would
Yeah,
you
I think
consider
some of
that
the
evidence
best.
or not?
I consider. I think some of the best murder mysteries are the ones where things are not so clear cut as, set of boot prints up to the
Yeah.
window, that there are extenuating circumstances. When there are other things to consider, well,
Sure.
on this
Yeah.
particular evening, there was this other thing that also explains this other thing. And so now we have to look at the deeper nuance of all these other things. But when you take all
Yeah.
of these things into account, you find that one thing. And this is why I loved Columbo so much, that old show Columbo. He would come across that one fact, that contradicts the alibi, that contradicts the killer's story, and it lays out exactly what the situation was. And then he's got to explain how that one fact sums it up. And I love the way he did it,
Yeah,
of course.
oh,
He
man.
always starts to leave and turns around and says, one more thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. All right, well,
All right,
that's
well, I
it.
hope
That's all I
that,
wanted to ask. Thank you so much.
Very good, very good. Thank you for calling. I've got another theist on the line, and so I'm excited to take that call. Seth, we're doing well. We're getting multiple theists tonight. Thank you very much, Jeff. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Take care.
Okay, so now I'm going to pick up a call from Jimmy in New York. Jimmy, who wants to talk about this thing, apparently.
Yeah, that symbol behind your back. That symbol. It's satanic.
What? I cannot hear you.
Do you hear me now? Hello?
You're very quiet.
Hello?
I can hear you, but only barely.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the symbol behind your back. That symbol behind it is like satanic.
Yes, the symbol behind me is satanic.
Hello?
Yes.
So, you said there's no God, but how can you have a satanic symbol? It makes no sense.
Because when Amargan does these shows for me, he can't figure out how to make my green screen work.
Well, how can you mislead people to hell? Why are you doing that? That's not cool.
I'm sorry, what?
What he's saying
Why are you
is
misleading people to hell? Why?
There he goes. Okay, now I can hear you.
Why are you misleading
Jimmy,
people
say
to
that
hell?
again.
Why are you taking people to hell? Why are you misleading people
Why
to
what
hell?
now? I'm hearing the words "to hell" over and over again.
I said, why are you misleading people? Why are you lying to people? Why are you misleading people towards hell?
Why are you something to hell?
Aaron, I think what he's saying is, if you are, hang on just a second, I'm going to do you a favor, Jimmy. He's asking, why are you broadcasting yourself with a satanic symbol behind your head? That's not cool, man. I think that's what the point was. How did I do, Jimmy?
Yeah, because like you say, you do not believe.
Without a proper phone connection, this conversation is near impossible. Go ahead and answer, though. I mean, a lot of people are curious. What's up with the Satan thing? Aaron, you atheist.
Well, I mean, a few years back now, I paid $25 for membership to the Satanic Temple because I wanted to support their defense of our First Amendment. They were defending freedom of religion in our Constitution, and I thought that they were making admirable inroads in that, so I joined. The Satanic Temple, if you look them up on their frequently asked questions or FAQs, you will find that the Satanic Temple does not believe in any Satan. They don't believe in a literal Satan. They don't believe in anything supernatural, and nor do I. But it's kind of cool, and so that's what I like about it.
It's interesting. A lot of people will come to me and say, why would you, like Lucian Greaves at the Satanic Temple and other Satanists are friends of mine. They are non-theistic Satanists. For them, Satan represents the rejection of tyranny and independent thought and the refusal to be governed and by authoritarians. And so Satan for them is partially an aesthetic. It's kind of, I've heard some people say that how Satanists, many of them are kind of Halloweeny sort of folk, and they enjoy sort of adorning their lives in that kind of imagery, sometimes even mythology, without believing that those myths are real. I'm interested too whenever I speak to a lot of, especially the more moderate or progressive Christians, and I say, what do you think about these tenets? And Aron is immediately on to me, and he knows where I'm going, but bear with me, brother. The 7 fundamental tenets, and I will read them, and I'm going to read them here because we have a moment. One should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason. The struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. One's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. The freedoms of others should be respected, including freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego one's own. Belief should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. People are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do one's best to rectify it and resolve any harm that may have been caused. And finally, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. I will present these without any context beyond what they are to devout Christians, and it's uncommonly, I say it's very common, but it's interesting how often they're like, well, those are, yeah, I agree with those. I think that's lovely. And then you tell them, hey, you just agreed with the 7 fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple, and they lose their freaking minds. But I think that speaks also to, the Satanic Temple in that way represents your value system. Would that be accurate, Aron? Is that too big a stretch for you?
Absolutely. There's a couple of tenets in there that I especially embrace. The latter one, the final one, isn't of all that much importance to me, but some of the others, there's a notion there about forgiveness that now, of course, you have to realize you done fucked up. That's kind of a requirement. But when you come forward and you realize, that I shouldn't have done or said that this was wrong. I look at my own life, and I remember that I would have, if I could have met myself as a young man, and I'm young, I'm glad that the younger me is gone. But if I could have met myself as a young man, we would not get along. He was an ass. But I appreciate that the Satanic Temple, those tenets, offer that, hey, if you realize that this was on you, and that you should make atonement for that, well, then we're gonna begin to extend some forgiveness for you. It goes completely against the notion of well, you're you left us, you just want to cancel everybody, when in fact it's the people on the right who want to cancel people the moment you don't support Trump anymore. But so that's one of the things that I admire about the tenets. And there's just the other things about Satanism, of course, the fashion. I've just always dressed this way. It's nice to have an excuse now. And I noticed that somebody in the chat comments who said that hell is not cool. There is no hell. It's not like there's a mystery. It's not like there's a possibility. There is no hell. Full stop. We don't have souls. So, and we have plenty. It's not just that we don't have any evidence of souls right exactly where we would have it if they were real. It's that we have so much evidence against souls, and not having any evidence of souls, neither in physics, according to Sean Carroll, neither in neuroscience, according to Patricia Churchland and Daniel Dennett, and not in that was in neurophilosophy, and in neuroscience either, according to a half a dozen neuroscientists that I've talked to. It's not just that we don't have any support for these things, it's that we have so much evidence against them that we can now safely say there is no immaterial, ghost-like aspect of yourself that rises out of the body when you die. You are the meat bag that you are, and there's no ghost in the machine. So there's no afterlife to go to because there's no thing to go to it. And hell was the first thing I had to let go of as a child, because I realized that hell is inconsistent with God. Now, when people tell you how great heaven is, they realize that, people will start thinking about heaven. Well, if I meet the metric, then I'll go to heaven. And they start thinking about heaven, and it doesn't take 2 or 3 minutes before you start finding huge problems with heaven. So the carrot's not working. We have to give them the stick. So then they made up they made up hell. And hell was meant to terrify anybody that tried to think too long about heaven, because it doesn't matter how long you think about hell, it still sucks, right? Except, strangely, when you compare it to heaven. Heaven and hell are so off-the-chart ridiculous dichotomies with no understanding of nuance. There's no extenuating circumstances. There's no accounting for all the things that you did good weighed against all the things that you did bad. There's just like a tipping scale. Well, it's you went one increment over the line, so now you get eternal damnation, where you will be mercilessly and savagely tortured daily for all eternity, forever and ever and ever, as viciously as anything ever could be. This is not what a real God would allow. This concept is the invention, obviously, of storytellers who got upset that, hey, people aren't buying my bullshit story that I want them to believe. Let me tell them a horror aspect of it that'll scare them into believing it. That's obviously all it is. There is no hell. We have no souls. There is no afterlife. Get the fuck over it. It's not possible under any circumstances. There's just no reality in which hell is a thing. Done.
I'm interested in, it's like the caller, Jimmy, who is no longer with us, by the way, but very disturbed at the imagery of Satan behind you. And I find that's really fascinating. It took me a long time, a couple of years, to actually get over my own fear of hell. It's one of the last things when I came out of Christianity that I was able to let go of. But it took a while because, they brand those fears in pretty deep. And you have this emotional, visceral reaction. You're terrified in some ways. What if I get it wrong? What if I am wrong? What if everybody else who's praying for me is right? And those types of things. And it took me a while to get over all of that and get to a point where, I wasn't afraid of the monster in the closet. It's amazing. I did a speech in Denver maybe 10 years ago. And at the end, just to show that I was no longer afraid, I did a prayer to Satan. I actually put a satanic image up on the big screen, and I'm like, prove yourself. I will give my soul to you, and I will burn for all eternity if you will manifest yourself. I will sacrifice myself to prove that Satan does exist if you will arrive here and prove that to the audience. And there were some people who flipped out. I mean, they weren't mad, but it just weirded them out because it was still kind of there. I'm reminded of when people ask me about how to get over the fear of the devil and this devilish imagery and how it still flips some people out. It's dissonant and seems evil. And I tell them the story of, I call him my grandkid, but he's kind of my step-grandkid, I guess, Natalie's grandchild. And he used to come over on Halloween, and we always decorate every year. And when he was 5, I had this giant 8-foot scary figure in the porch. And he was pretty terrifying. He had a skull face and he had orange eyes and he had white hair that came back. And of course he had this metallic body, but you would plug him in and he would speak and he would do these Halloweeny things. And he was pretty intense for a young kid. So, we obviously didn't we weren't trying to scare him, but he was weird. He was genuinely scared of it. And so when he would come over, we would take it off of the porch and we would hide it back in Natalie's office downstairs so it wouldn't frighten him. And the next year when I decorated, I had an epiphany. And so I had him there when I assembled it. And I said, hey, check this out. And it was all in a box. All right, so here's the feet. We're going to put these in. There's a little bar, and it pops in there. And look, here's an electrical cord, and then we're going to put his legs. And here, this is all made of foam. You see, it's nothing to be afraid of. And this is a speaker, and it's got a recording in it. It's not really a voice. Some actor did that somewhere, and that's some of what I do on Halloween. I put together shows, and I make voices just like this person did. And look, here's the head. Here, why don't you help me? I'll lift you up, and you put the head on the top. And then we both put the scary guy out on the front porch together. But because he got a chance to look behind the curtain, he got a chance to see how it was constructed and how it would be deconstructed. It demystified it. And he was no longer afraid. And it was so remarkable because the next time he came over, he walked up as proud as he could be, and he had his chest just popped out. And he goes, I'm not afraid of the scary guy anymore. Big smile on his face. And I think the same thing works with hell. When we go back and we understand how hell was part of many religious mythologies, how hell has been used to control the masses, how hell makes no sense morally, logistically, etc. If you begin to reverse engineer it, it takes the teeth out of it. And then you can look it in the face and say, I'm not afraid of you anymore. And that's the analogy I like to use. Deconstruct it, understand it. Once you see how it all works, then it's no longer terrifying to you. At least that's my hope. So,
see, that's why you're the humanitarian here, because you're able to tell endearing stories like that. I mean, what was my answer? There is no hell. Shut the fuck up, stupid. And then you come in.
Good cop, bad cop. Right?
All right, so I'm going to pick up another call. We've got. I'm going to try one more time for Theopolis. Theopolis in Italy.
Hey, how are you guys?
Theopolis. There he is. How do you do?
I'm here. Hi, I'm doing all right. How are you guys?
It's all right. What do you want to talk about?
So, I'm wondering, I'm going to be honest, I think you guys have a laughable basis for morality, and that's if you even have any. So please explain what that is.
Okay. Well, since we evolved as a social species, dependent on society, because no man is an island, we have to depend on our family, friends, and fellows, which means that we have to have a mutual empathy for our family, friends, and fellows, because this is society that we depend on also depends on us to cohabitate productively. And so those people who can, over time, show that they will adhere to their word, that they are reliable, that they're trustable, that they actually care about other people, those people are going to be favored by that society in multiple ways. Whereas if you have dysfunctional mirror neurons or underdeveloped prefrontal lobes or whatever, if you're selfish, or you don't have any, you're apathetic rather than empathetic, well, then at some point you're going to be ostracized from that society, either by being banished, imprisoned, or killed. And so you are removed from the gene pool. Now, aberrations still come up all the time, but what we have over time is, over many generations, is that we have a certain celebration of the people that we can rely upon and that we can trust, the people that are good. And we've learned to eliminate the people who are only out for their own ends and who don't care about the feelings and pain and what they're doing to other people. And that is the basis of morality. Whereas I would say the theist has no basis for morality at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, are you familiar with world history?
Of course.
So, are you familiar with the two first atheist empires, the USSR and the CCP, were murderous dictatorships?
Yes, I am aware of like how Stalin, for example, ended up killing hundreds of millions of people, as I remember, simply by denying Darwinism. He gulagged Darwinian scientists. He refused to accept that genetics was real. He wanted to pretend that plants, that crops were communist.
Yes, well, I think it was
Yeah,
Lysenkoism.
exactly. Lysenkoism, Lamarckian Lysenkoism. So that was a horrible thing. That was a bit of ignorance. So yeah,
So here's the thing.
I made a
I think
video
right
about
now
that.
you are actually, that's the thing, is you're actually allied with the modern day Lysenkoist. You might not see that, but
Except
you are. You're
I'm
you're allied with.
directly opposed because I'm teaching Darwinian. I'm teaching genetics as real. I'm teaching Darwinian mechanisms, and I'm showing how Lamarckian beliefs were completely wrong. So I'm opposite of, not in line with.
So
Now,
are you educated in critical theory?
on the idea that a theist has morality, as we discussed early in the show, many theists have told me that if it wasn't for their belief in God, that they would be out murdering and raping and vandalizing, and yet atheists don't do that. So when you look at the statistics for the least, or for the most secular, the most atheist countries in the world, you will notice that statistically there's also the lowest crime rate, specifically also relating to violent crime. China tends to be an exception on some of these, but for most part, the happiest places to live are the most atheist countries, and the most theistic, the most religious countries are the most dangerous with the highest crime rates. And criminals who are more religious, the more religious they are, the more abusive they are, the more likely they are to support capital punishment and corporal punishment. The more likely they are to support the torture of prisoners and so forth. And for abusers, the more religious they are, then statistically, the more and younger their virgin or their victims will be.
Okay, so are you a socialist?
Why would no? What does that got to do with socialism? No, I'm not a socialist.
Seth, are you a socialist?
Seth
No.
a socialist? No.
I have some Democratic socialist leanings here and there, but
okay. Are you guys vegans?
Are we what?
Are you vegan?
What's up with the voice? Are you using some kind of a processor, or is your voice simply like? Are you filtering it through something? It sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, it's showing up on the call-in studio too. That keeps changing color because it's like losing connection.
I'm not sure what's happening.
If I may, first of all, I'm interested in your tone when you call and you find our position laughable. So you've begun with an adversarial kind of a temperature to the conversation, which is fine if that's the avenue you want to go down. I'm going to put your call on mute because, frankly, I can't hear myself think over the noise, and I'll come back to you. So you challenge us immediately on whether or not we have morals or maybe even know what morality is. Theo, where do your morals come from? How do you define morality, and where do you get yours?
What is that noise?
All right. Hey, Theo, you are not going to get to talk anymore. There's way too much background noise to have a conversation here.
All right. Somebody made the decision for us, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that was
I don't. If someone wants to call and say, "Where do your morals come from?" and you and I have heard it 1,000 times, I'm willing to engage for the 1,001 time. Okay, fine, I'll have the conversation. But to call up and say, "Well, I find it laughable," to immediately become combative in that way, I find interesting. This is an adversarial tone. I find it condescending. I don't think it's a good faith approach to trying to determine where evolved ethics come from. And so, when I'm dealing with what I consider to be a bad faith caller, I'm not too chagrined when they disappear off into the ether and we move on to somebody else, because quite frankly, I don't think they were interested in having a conversation among adults in good faith. I think this was about condescension and finger pointing. Maybe I got it wrong. I don't know.
How rare is it that a defender of the faith argues in good faith?
No, I know that I think you and I have different audiences, because I will get some people who they are who I was. they're they're afraid. Yes, they're ignorant, but they're not going out there just operating with a desire to be shitty to other human beings. They simply, they exist in a cocoon and they don't know the world outside the cocoon. And so they ask these questions. Well, how do you know rape's wrong? How do you know murder is wrong? Aren't you afraid of what's going to happen if you die? What if you're wrong? Aren't you afraid of hell? They have all these questions that you and I have heard so many times. But I don't think a lot of these people are coming from a position of insincerity or a desire to be wrong or to be shitty to other people. Some people, they genuinely are like, well, explain it to me because I just don't get it. I don't understand. I'm not processing. And we might have an opportunity then to create the crack that lets in the light, to humanize that conversation. And we're not going to do it in the meme verse, and we're not going to do it by telling people they're idiots, and we're not going to do it by belittling and insulting them and saying, well, I don't know how you wouldn't even know, blah, blah, blah. I think if we sense that they're genuinely interested in knowing more tomorrow than they knew yesterday, then I think we lead with humanity and we have a good faith conversation. And, who knows, you might plant a seed that comes to fruition in a year, 2 years, 10 years, but maybe someday. So
the argument that someone is moral because they're afraid they'll get punished when they do the immoral thing they desperately want to do, that only tells me that they're not moral, right? It's like Penn Jillette said. I don't often quote Penn Jillette, but he says, "I've raped exactly as many people as I want to, which is zero."
Zero, yeah. It's funny. My mother and father, the most Puritan people I've ever met, and just hardcore. And it was my normal growing up. There was no lightweight Sunday only, Sunday Christian stuff. They were hardcore. But once every 6 months, my mother would get so mad that she would say a cuss word. And it was awesome. This Puritan, super Christian, the theologian, the woman who is a Greek New Testament teacher, the woman who had brought us up to be children of the straight and narrow. And something would happen, or I would backtalk, or there would be we'd screw up or whatever. And she'd be like, and her whole face would twist up. So she looked like one of those trees in The Wizard of Oz. So she would like, shit. Literally, it was awesome. And of course, for the rest of the day, we're like, Mama said shit. But I thought to myself, what's happening here? The psychology of it is interesting because when the chips were down and she needed to vent, that was the word that she secretly got the most satisfaction out of. That was the pressure reliever that she denied herself. Why? Because she had been indoctrinated to believe that she was offending the Almighty and debasing herself and all of these other horrible things. One of the most liberating things I discovered when I got out of the faith was being able to swear. That's amazing. I think I read somewhere that people who use profanity, I try not to be crass about it. People who swear, I think, are more balanced and generally happier than those who don't. It's therapeutic. So anyway, I find it interesting that people sneak in what they really want to do, So
I don't often hear that kind of language come out of you. So I have to say that when earlier you got frustrated with a caller tonight, you said, God damn it.
Well, I keep the Thinking Atheist show PG-13. And although I do swear a lot in real life, I try not to swear too much on the show because I'm often what comes up first in a Google search when someone is coming out of the faith, or they're having doubts, or they're curious, or they're being ostracized by their family, or they're on the journey, or whatever. So they type in the word atheist and they'll find me. And I'm not saying that those who are loaded with profanity are doing anything at all wrong. Good for them. That's the flavor of your show. But I wanted to make sure that the temperature of my broadcast was accessible enough that nobody would be put off by the F-bombs and whatnot. And I try not to be egregious, but I feel like language can be a surgical strike. If you swear all the time, then no one hears it. But if you let it go and all of a sudden you find an opportunity, or you just need to explode and blow off steam and you throw out a God damn it, it means a little more. So yes, it does happen. Yes, I am imperfect. But yeah, maybe it's funnier when I do it. I don't know. Apparently, I'm the Mr. Rogers of the movement, Aron. So anyway, whatever.
Please forgive the dog. He has apparently detected that something exists outside the house, and
Hey,
therefore
I'm sorry.
it must know his wrath.
Digression. Did I see that Falkor was at the vet?
Yeah. Falkor had an issue. We don't know what the hell happened to him. He woke up staggering. Just trying to stand still. He's still with us. Yes, he would, but he was standing still, and he was doing that Captain Jack Sparrow thing. He was obviously messed up. We've no idea. The vet said that he must have. We take him for walks frequently, and sometimes he roots. He'll try to root around in somebody's garbage. He's always trying to eat something, and I always have to yank him away. But apparently, he got hold of something. When, where, what? I don't know. Could have been in the house. He might have gotten in the garbage. I don't know but he apparently got a hold of something toxic.
Okay, well, I heard a dog bark, and I wanted to make sure that Falkor was okay, because that popped immediately into my mind. Is that like a replacement auxiliary dog, or is it Falkor? Is everything okay? Okay, I feel much better.
Falkor he pulled through. He's still with us. All right, so I'm going to get another call here. We have another theist, and I've been told that we're going to like this one, because apparently Ronaldo is God of all. So we're speaking to God now. Ronaldo, can you hear us?
Supposedly, yes.
Supposedly, yes.
Can you hear? Can you hear? Supposedly. Well, check this out. I was studying the law of magnetism. I was studying the law of magnetism one day, and it was 3/6/2021, and I was telling my neighbor that when I died and whatever power that I got from this world, that I would transfer it to him. Love your neighbor as yourself. 10 minutes later, lightning strikes in front of us. It sparks in between the houses. It came down, it sparked on the right side, crackled to the left, sparked again, and then went up. So that night, I claim to be God of all, because I claim now, since then, I said authority has been given to me, and then I got the word authority, and I took the word apart. It says, author, I thank you. I got a dollar bill on January 14th, 2024. It's Year of the Dragon this year. And the serial number on it is 666-05777.
Fascinating. And Ronaldo, God of all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
How much change do I have in my pockets?
I have no idea.
Well, then, thank you for calling. All right. We're going to move on to the next one.
I even came up with Man of Sin. Man of Sin. Put on your fingers, you got the M. 3 fingers says man, the other 2 pointing OF, and the other 3 is sin.
Okay.
My name in Jewish gematria. My name in Jewish gematria is 1313.
Okay, good.
And my family tree revolves around the number 13.
Yeah, I got that. That was subtle.
Say
I picked
again?
up on it. Yeah, I can hear. I'm going to pray to you now. I'm going to pray that you stop and go get your meds. Okay, so I'm going to drop this call, and we're going to pick up one of the other ones waiting. Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm trying to think of the last time I've encountered a deity. I mean, it has been a while. So, is this a missed opportunity? Perhaps if we had dropped to our knees and offered up some petitions, maybe there's something on my wish list that I've been thinking about buying maybe a couple of those little electric EV scooters to go around the neighborhood. Maybe I could have prayed for one of those. I don't know. And, maybe solve world hunger, get a third season of Mindhunter. I have so many requests for God. And yet, I should have maybe seized the moment. So,
I remember when I was a little boy, I was told that if you anything you ask for, you will receive it. Okay, so I was 8 years old. At the time, it was around, I don't know, 1960 something, because I'm old. And I remember there was a popular show on TV at the time called Flipper. And I remember praying for a pet dolphin.
Yeah.
Anything you ask for, you will receive it, they said.
Yeah, whatever you ask in my name, I will do it, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. And yet, whenever I was a believer, we always had these sort of game of Twister, get out of answered prayer free cards. Well, he may not answer your prayer today. Maybe it'll be tomorrow or next year. Maybe not even in this life. Maybe it will be in heaven. Or maybe he did answer it, but not in the way that you expected. Maybe the exercise of petitioning, the obedience of prayer is part of the exercise is the point, and the answer isn't all. It doesn't make any difference what we did. We always had some sort of a silly buddy Jesus answer to explain why prayer was still answered in the first place. So.
All right, I'm going to pick up another call. We've only got a couple left here. So we are talking now with Cloud. Cloud from North Carolina. Go ahead, Cloud. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Yes. So what do you want to talk about?
Okay, cool. So to keep it, I know that the message, what the call screen wrote down is probably a little bit vague. I was having a conversation with my dad a couple of days ago, and it lasted for 2 hours, and eventually boiled down to, we just went through just standard. He was saying that spirits and that souls were real, and because of that, because science doesn't know everything about the universe, that means that there's a God who's doing it. So I just explained that's just saying that because we don't understand something, God did it. Went through the whole thing, explained why that was dumb, and we eventually got to the part where he had finally admitted that he doesn't have a way to defend why he believes what he believes, but he thinks that my position of me being an atheist is stupid because of how young I am, and so he keeps saying, no matter what, when I get older, I'll eventually start being an atheist. He's saying that's a thing that you do when you're young, right? And I'm 22. I'm not a child, but I'm still pretty young, and so it's I don't know how to get past we walk through. You don't have any way to prove what you're saying is true. But because I'm younger than you, that means I'm wrong. It's just something that you do as growing pain. So I want to see if you guys have ever dealt with that type of argument before, and how you can just get through to someone who's making that type of argument, because it frustrated the shit out of me, and I couldn't think of a way to respond.
With my own family, they will tell me something that is flat not true. And they won't let me prove that it's not true, because when I get close to it, they deflect. They want to change the subject. They want to bring up something else that isn't true. And then I start working on that to show that that's not true. And then, well, what about this? And so then it becomes the what about this other thing that also isn't true, but they're never going to let you pin them down on any fucking thing. That's when you have to have some rules to begin with. And they have to understand that these are the rules to begin with. That when you say that something is true, you have to show the truth of it, the evidence backing that conclusion. And what is asserted, positive claims require positive evidence, but what is asserted without evidence may be dismissed without evidence. They have to understand these are the rules to begin with, the rules of engagement as we start. If you say a thing is true, you say that there is a God, you say that whatever, and this goes to politics too. My family would tell me all kinds of ridiculous political things that in a moment I could show okay, let's just Google that. but they don't believe in fact checkers. They say the fact checkers are wrong. Random statement, the fact checkers, all of them, for every fact, every claim ever asserted, all the fact checkers are wrong. The fact checkers are wrong. That's the dismissal that they make. Can we just spend a moment on this? Show me. You say that everybody in Hollywood is a devil-worshipping, cannibalistic pedophile. Do you really think that Tom Hanks drinks raped baby's blood while he worships Satan? And the answer from my own family is, you can't prove he doesn't. That's it. You can't prove he doesn't. No. You've got all of that backwards. It's not up to me to prove that he doesn't. It's for you to substantiate that he does. Otherwise, we dismiss your claim as unsupported. Throughout science only cares about what is supported and what is not supported. And whatever is not supported by evidence does not warrant further consideration. So if you have these arguments with your family and they say anything, show me pictures or it didn't fucking happen. It's a simple attitude. But they want to reverse everything because they want to believe shit that they know is not really true.
Okay, I'm going to toss a different perspective in, Cloud, if I can, because I think my background is a little bit different. The religious people in my life who are defending their religious position, they don't know that they're wrong. So facts rarely change minds in these conversations because most people are not arguing from a position of genuinely wanting to approach even the most uncomfortable data to change their position. Often, they are in a reinforcement culture. They want to be validated. They're part of a community that validates them. This may be the only belief system that they have ever known. Maybe they genuinely do believe it's the truth and that people like me and Aron and you and others out there, we're all the enemies of God and they have to be wary of us. And this may have been programmed into them from their earliest memories. And that's a powerful thing. But they, there's a difference between people who engage in good faith and and those who are simply pointing at you and saying, you're wrong and it's stupid. Your father and you engaging in this way, I don't think is productive. I think your father is not interested in understanding you. Your father is trying to fix you. And those are two different things. And I'm guessing in that conversation, you began to throw out all of the reasons that came to your mind as to why you reject the Bible and why this makes no sense and hell is immoral. This and evolution is true, and you went through a lot of the data points, reasoning your way through your own journey and explaining that to your dad. Would I be on the mark? Did you try that?
So what's weird is that when it comes, what's so weird about it is that I don't even know if I would call my dad like a particularly religious person. Like he and I agree a lot on the Bible is a terrible source for like anything of like trying to find the truth of it. But for some reason, he's really big on like everyone should be like he tries to get me to go to church all the time. He's real big on like because I was raised a Jehovah's Witness and he believes. Go ahead.
Well, I think you may be helping me to illustrate my point. I don't think most people go to church for reasons of theology. I don't think most people participate in a religious culture because of theology. I think they participate for reasons of family, community, geography, ritual, comfort, right? And so you not towing the line, I mean, that's uncomfortable. Your father now has a son who does not validate him. And he is not arguing from a position of data. He's arguing emotionally. He's arguing because, man, atheists are all wrong and you're just young. And I went through the same thing. Seth's going through a midlife crisis. He's worshiping at the church of Richard Dawkins because he read the God Delusion. He just wants to sin, blah, blah, blah. They have all these reasons for other than the one that may make the most sense. Well, maybe the universe doesn't involve a cosmic wizard who would go on to conjure some garden nudists who chatted up talking animals, right? I mean, maybe a donkey didn't speak Hebrew. Maybe people didn't live to be 900 years old. Maybe there weren't monsters and sea giants and people living underwater inside fish and flying chariots of fire. And maybe all these things aren't true. But he's in defense mode. I guess if I was to draw my position back to any one thing, it's this: understand that your father is not arguing from my vantage. He's not arguing because he wants to understand you. He wants to be right, right? And I don't think you owe him an explanation. Your journey is about you, so I think it's just fine to lay out quickly. I don't buy it. I've read it. It's not satisfying. This has been debunked. I'm going to take my own journey on my terms. That's totally fine. But I would not get sucked into the black hole of being in the company of someone who apparently has a feeling of ownership over you because they're a parent. And you're going to tell me why you believe what you believe, and I'm going to tell you why it's stupid. Your life belongs to you. I would make your journey about you. And quite frankly, if someone is operating and speaking to you in ways that belittle you or diminish you or try to disqualify you, I just, say, have a nice day, go get on with your life. And again, make that day about you. Okay.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
I made the same mistake. Look, I don't mean to go off on a tangent. I made the same mistake. When I came out of the faith, I went home, right? And I'm sitting in the room with my believing family. And I'm like, have you seen this? And this has been totally debunked. And did you understand? We were totally wrong about what evolution was. They didn't teach us correctly in Christian school. That was wrong. And have you noticed this? And have you seen that this is crazy? And all of the other religions, comparative religions, the other deities, blah, blah, blah. I laid it all out with this naive thinking that, man, if I just put the right series of words together, they'll get me. And it never happened. Because they weren't interested in understanding me. They wanted to fix me and make me like them. And I had to finally come to the point where I'm like, well, my journey's not about the people in this room. So I don't have to explain myself unless I want to. I don't have to lay it all out on the table unless I choose to. They don't have any propriety over me because we're blood relatives. I'm going to go out and try to live the best life I can. They can either love me for who I am, or if I realize that their love and acceptance is conditional, it says a hell of a lot more about them than it says about me. Maybe that's a better way to say it. Okay?
I can see that. I think the problem is this. I feel like because in other aspects of life, he's a very reasonable person. And normally just going through a show oh, this doesn't happen, and I can show you why this doesn't happen, he'll accept that. But a lot of that's why I don't think that people who are theists or religious are stupid. It's just for some reason, this one aspect of their life, they just turn off their brain. It frustrates me because a perfectly otherwise reasonable person just will believe something for I don't know why. It's so frustrating when I hear that. And it's I can't ignore it. It's just
Virtually any other topic, when you show them the data, they're able to change their minds, but not this one. Yeah. Religion and politics are the two that are protected, where the facts don't fucking matter.
I have to figure that out. I think this whole thing brings up a story. Oh, go ahead.
If I was to leave you with a piece of advice, because we're on the clock here, but I think guard your time and energy and guard your sanity. I think don't let someone diminish you because of your age. Don't let someone find a reason to disqualify you from coming to a conclusion or asking a good question or having doubt. Oh, you're young. I've heard people say, well, you just went off to college and you got introduced to all those heathen ideas from college. They have all of these reasons to disqualify, to discredit the witness. But you're not discredited. Your mind, your heart, your journey, your values, your opinions, no matter where they go, those belong to you. And it's a valid journey that you're taking. And you're likely not going to convince Dad in this regard. But that's not your goal. I just don't think your goal is, I'm just going to figure out a way to make him understand. That way, madness lies. You will go crazy. Instead, I think, stay where you are and then draw that boundary that I'm on a journey and it's just fine. And I get to take this journey. No one gets to tell you how to live, Dad. No one's going to tell me how to live as well. And I'm doing my best. And I give you this promise. I'm going to pursue the truth as honestly as I can. And that's all you have to say. And then don't let them reel you in. Don't let them suck you in. Don't let them bait you. Don't let them push all the buttons that are going to make you sit on the couch and the veins are going to pop out of your head and voices are going to get raised and everyone's going to start going crazy and everyone's going to leave more frustrated. That shit happens all the time. It happened to me. I just don't think if you see that happening physically, walk away with a wave and a smile. Love you. I'll catch you later. Protect yourself, your time, your energy, your sanity. Okay?
Gotcha. Thank you.
Appreciate the call.
Much appreciated.
We're going to pick up the next and last caller of the evening. Thank
No
you,
problem.
Cloud.
Have a good one.
All right. Good night. All right. So this next one, and this is a total Seth call. This is the one where they need the humanity. This is one where Seth can answer, and I sadly cannot. So we are speaking with an atheist from Minnesota, Daniel. Can you hear us?
Hey there.
Hey.
Yes, I can, Mr. Ra and Mr. Andrews. It is a pleasure to be on the line with you two this evening. I know that we're pressed for time here, so I'll try to be very brief with a little bit of gushing, if I may. Several years ago, when I began my deconstruction process, I took to YouTube to see what stress tests my faith could sort of deal with, and I found both of you gentlemen's channels. And well, between the two of you and Paulogia, it's been like 6 years, and I now call myself an atheist. And so I just wanted to lead with, I'm very excited to speak with you this evening. And Aron, you might have something to weigh in on this as well, but from a slightly different angle. But I am definitely, as you said in the intro, Seth, this is coming straight for you. I have I'm raising two small children, and this is going to feel a little redundant, perhaps, with the last caller. Unfortunately, this is the boundaries question, and so this may feel a little tra-la-la, but I'm going to go for it anyways. My folks raised me in the Church of God of Prophecy, which, if anybody in the audience knows that organization, I mean, it's a minority, holiness movement, speaking in other tongues, that sort of thing, from Appalachia, because that's where all the good ones come from, right? And in my late teen years, moved us over to the Assemblies of God, and my father became clergy. He is a ordained minister, and my folks, obviously we're not keen on, once I started asking all these questions and going down this path, but they've more or less minded their P's and Q's when it comes to if I expressed, hey, could you not talk to the kids about this way, please? And that to say that then there are these very subtle, but I feel like formative things that stuff will kind of slip out with. I don't want to feel like I'm always on these people who I love and care about, and also, like, I just I'm having difficulty, like, keeping an appropriate level of, like, what do you sort of let come through, just because it's cultural Christianity. We do live here in the Upper Midwest, and some stuff doesn't feel like it's an affront to reason necessarily on its face. But then, like, they're good about not telling my children they're going to burn in hell. All right, so they're good at that. They're good at not doing that, but not great at like, concealing that they're creationists, for example. And I always couch these things when my kiddos, if my oldest in particular has questions, I always frame stuff as, a lot of people think different things, and here's what I can tell you that we know. And actually, Aron, I definitely veer into a lot of your material from your evolutionary education stuff in explaining some of these things. But I'm just concerned about being overprotective and also not doing enough and letting too much slide. Enjoy the word salad, gentlemen.
Aron, you wanted to, are you totally punting this to me, or?
I am totally punting this to you. It's
Okay.
all yours.
Right on. Right on. Respect.
Let me see if I can rephrase what you are articulating. So how old are your kids, may I ask?
Yeah, my oldest is about to turn 8, going into 2nd grade in it'll be October, and then his little brother just turned 6 this last month.
Okay. I think what I'm hearing is we want to raise free-thinking kids. Mom and dad are overtly religious, and in passive-aggressive, so far not overtly aggressive ways, they are broadcasting their Christianity, likely because they're concerned about the grandkids. Would that be a way to sort of summarize all that?
That's a really good way to encapsulate that. Yes.
Okay. Well, this is extremely common, and I don't have a magic bullet answer beyond. I think that it's just fine for the kids to know that grandpa and grandma are Christians. They go to a Christian church. They believe in the Christian Bible, and they worship the Christian God. I think it's just fine for them to have an understanding. This is who they are, and this is what they think. Now, your mom and I, we don't believe this. We have had our own, we've taken a look at this information, and we don't think it's true. But, we want you to be able to ask a lot of questions in your life as well, because we all should be in pursuit of the truth. And I think, you are creating an atmosphere of safety and curiosity. The more if you were to ever try to rope off what your parents were doing, it would become like the forbidden fruit. They'd be so curious. They definitely want to go over and be all in. I also think this is a wonderful opportunity to begin a comparative religions exercise. Grandpa and grandma, they believe that this God created the world, and this God came and he did this, and there was a hell and there was a devil. I mean, you can introduce the more darker stuff when they get older. Did you know that this religion over here, they believe this, 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 and this, and then there's another religion, and they believe this, this, this. Here's their origin story. Here's their savior. Here's their prophet. Here's what they were like. It's funny how whenever kids begin to see, holy cow, look at all these things out here, and everybody disagrees, and yet there are a lot of similarities. And what do you think? Let's be critical about these things. It makes it a fun exercise for them. It gives them a sense of ownership. Beyond all of that, I think you're going to have to be very vigilant that your mother and father are not crossing parental boundaries and trying to reparent your kids, especially when your backs are turned. And they may play the mom and dad card. That's my grandkids, and you're not going to let me, blah, blah, blah. And that's just bullshit. At some point, if they start scaring your kids with hell, that's a huge boundary violation. And then you say, well, you're not allowed to do this. And we're going to teach them what you believe and that you believe it. But we're going to parent these children. And if you refuse to not acknowledge the boundaries that we have set up, there will be consequences, whether it's less time with us or not being able to see the kids or whatever. There's a book I'd like to recommend to you. It came out several years ago. It's by Dale McGowan. It's called Raising Free Thinkers, a practical guide for parenting beyond belief. And I can link it in the chat. In fact, I'll just grab that link and put it in right now. Dale McGowan he is so good at helping parents not brainwash their kids into atheism, but to raise kids who know how to think instead of just being programmed as to what to think, to cultivate that curiosity and to give them the tools to be able to sort of bullshit proof their life as best as possible. And that's what I think you want for your kids, right? It's not like you want to tell them what to think, but you want to inoculate them against the destructive, damaging mythologies, the debunked bullshit that might harm them. And I think that's a great resource for you. Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard of that book. Thank you for the recommendation. I guess what I'm getting from your response is kind of outlining for me like the edges where my own sort of like religious trauma lives, and what I'm hearing you kind of invite me to do is to open the mic, as it were, but not in a sense of like just free for all and I'm not going to pay attention, but always through framing and let them have their say to an extent, because well, otherwise I'm out of any kind of control of the situation to be able to facilitate building that type of free thinker.
Well, I'm not sure I'm tracking. I think if I could summarize it in a couple of sentences, it's this. I think teach your kid, here's what grandpa and grandma believe. And here's what I believe. And here's what your mom believes. And here's kind of how we got there. And here's what other people believe in other churches. And here's kind of where it all came from. And let's just learn. And I think if you create a safe environment where they can realize it's okay to disagree, and it's okay to ask questions, and it's okay to doubt, and all those things. And at the same time, you are not giving mom and dad permission to come in and scare the shit out of your kids with hell theology and cross boundaries in that way. I think that's the best way forward. Dale McGowan, honestly, he said it much better than me in the book, Raising Free Thinkers. I would just pick it up and give it a read. It's good stuff. Okay.
Right on. I'll take a look. I definitely. May I ask one last, very brief, unrelated question?
Make it quick.
I'm sorry. What?
You're fine, brother. He's just being sorry. No, you're fine.
I apologize, Mr. Ra. I apologize. Seth, I know that you have a background in radio, and I didn't scour your bio enough before this conversation, but were you ever on like nationally syndicated Christian radio in like the late 90s, mid 90s?
No, I was on the air I was on KXOJ from 1990 to 2000, live 101.5 from 2000 to 2002, and then I segued into secular radio on KISS FM for a couple of years after that. But it was only in Oklahoma. I wasn't. I wasn't. So. Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. Well, because for some reason I thought, I mean, it might just be the type of voice that you use for broadcast, but when I first found you, there felt like I've heard this guy talk somewhere before, and I can't say there's one caveat, Daniel, but there's one caveat. I did used to voice track. I used to not syndicate. I used to be a voice for Christian radio stations in other states. This is something that FM radio voice tracking. So I was on the air doing an afternoon show in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was doing a midday show somewhere in Florida. Well, it's been 20 years. So it's possible you grazed upon a radio station that had me in that way, but it wasn't like a national syndication. It was just me serving a local market somewhere. But thanks for asking, brother. Appreciate it. Right on. Of course. I appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thank you so much for what you continue to do. And I'm going to look that book up. Have a good one.
Thank you much.
Aron, I always feel a little weird asking family or answering family related questions. I mean, I rarely see my own family. I don't have a relationship with my mother. My father and I were barely speaking when he passed away. You know, I mean, it's hard. So.
And I can't answer that question because I've had no success. If my family were tolerant enough that they could withstand that I didn't worship their God, but when I didn't worship the orange God, they cut all communication.
Tangerine Palpatine. Yeah, I understand it.
I prefer
Danger
Marmalade
game.
Mussolini.
Marmalade Mussolini. You know, it's my mother, and I, you know, for the most sincere of reasons, and this is a great example of how even the people with the most sincere of intentions can do real harm. But she, I think, is like, well, you know, I gave birth to you, and this is how I raised you, and so here I am, a man in my 50s, and I think she feels like that gives her a kind of propriety to step over a boundary and to say, you know, you have to listen to me, and you have to take my word, and you have to give me an audience, and you must da da da. And I remember the last time we had a conversation, it was another one of those, you know, if only you'll allow me to explain Jesus to you one more time. I know I can convince you. And it'd been 15 years. And I told her, I said, if you do this one more time, you and I are not going to have a relationship. If you violate this boundary one more time, I'm just going to have to tell you now, if you do this one more time, we are not going to speak. And do you understand? And I heard a tentative yes, but she forced it out of her mouth. Within 2 days, it had continued, and we haven't spoken since. And there is a culture that would call me a bad son for that. You know, how dare you disrespect the woman who brought you into this world and raised you and sacrificed so much? And I appreciate all the things that she did, but it doesn't give her propriety. I'm a grown-ass man, and boundaries are important. And I think, you know, respect is important, and that includes self-respect. I guess some people would say that I have failed in salvaging a relationship with my mother, but I have succeeded in establishing a boundary of self-respect that has empowered me in my own journey. And that's what I hold on to. I don't see myself as a failure. I see myself as someone who succeeded in saying, no, I'm going to try to figure this out without being named and blamed and shamed. And I'm going to do so on my own terms. And I think that's a good measuring stick for success. And I think that's my advice to Daniel as well.
What I've encountered with some of the people in my own life, and I don't mean to drag this out, I should have just let you end on that note.
No.
But one of the things that frustrate me is that the admissions that I get from my own family that I have to be dissuaded by the facts. Okay, you show me you make a claim, show me that there's some truth to it, and we'll talk about it, right? Well, they never can. They can, whatever, whether it's religious or political, they can never show that the thing is true, right? And they can't show any indication of that at all. But if I do something as a counterpoint, I can show you right damn now whether it's true, right? So we argue over whether the Bible says it. Well, the Bible says this. No, it doesn't. Yeah, it does. Well, show me where. Well, I don't know where it said. Well, then it doesn't say that because we live in we can Google search this. We will know. But the Bible actually says this. No, it doesn't say that. Oh, yeah, it does. It says it here, 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 and here. Let me show you. Don't want to know. So I can show the truth of it, and they don't want to see it. That's the part that's frustrating to me. And I got an admission from my own mother that she doesn't want to know. Does not want to know. She wants to believe what she wants to believe. Shut the hell up.
Well, I think there's a lot that's revealed about the psychology of belief, right? People hold on to an identity belief. Theirs is an identity. Melanie Tresick King over at thinkingispower.com has a lot of great information about identity beliefs. So when they've welded it to their person, the idea that it might be wrong or could be dismantled or debunked, well, then that dismantles a part of who they are, what their whole identity is. And it's why the same reason that you can show the spherical earth proofs to a flat earther and they double down. And you can go to a 9/11 truther and show them that the 9/11 conspiracies are bullshit and they double down. And you can go to people who deny germs and show them that vaccines work, et cetera, and they double down because they're not, they're arguing to defend an identity. And, that's a whole other conversation, probably a whole other show, but it is interesting.
Yeah, I'm seeing that there are some people in the chat that applaud you. One in particular says you're being true to yourself, and it's too bad others can't accept that. I just want to call that.
And this community it has been a family for me. Aron, not to drag this out, I was in Wichita a few years ago, and a woman came up to me, and she'd known somehow about the struggles that I'd had with my biological parents. And she walks up, a beautiful woman in her 60s, and she said, I just want you to know that if I was your mother, I would be so proud of you. And we hugged and we cried. I mean, it was just an amazing human moment, And I have, as you, my brother, and so many other activists out there that I meet on the road, and the people who are part of this audience and in my own community, et cetera. Family comes in many forms. And while I do have my own biological family, I think, the people who accept me for who I am, warts and all, flaws and all, who respect boundaries and want to take the journey alongside me. I mean, those people have brought more into my life than I could have ever asked for. So I'm not a victim in any way. But I am someone who has had a few struggles on the family tree. And I'm fortunate to have family all over the world, thanks to the atheist movement, the humanist movement, the secular movement, et cetera. And Aron is included. He's my brother. He's been my brother for almost 15 years now. So it's been a lot of fun being a co-host with you. And thanks for letting me play along, man.
Very much looking forward to when you're going to be within range for me to go see one of your presentations. You're doing a tour right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right, you got
I'll be in St. Louis. Yeah, I'll be in St. Louis speaking to the Ethical Society on Saturday night, and then at the Unitarian Universalist Church, which is being held in the same venue Sunday morning. I love the UUs. They've always been very welcoming. And then it's Fort Worth and Dallas the following weekend. I'm going to Sarnia, Ontario for Baja Con. I'm speaking in Toronto. I'll be in Bentonville, I think Lexington, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, and a few others. SethAndrews.com/events has all those details.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Always enjoy having you on.
Good
night, everybody.
It's a pleasure, brother. I will see you later.